joined by our esteemed faculties. So we are also joined by the Honorable Vice Chancellor. So Dr. Shuma Chakraborty, she is from Sir PLS Hospital, Calcutta. She is a senior breast
Namaskar, sir.
radiologist. And so we are very, very happy to have Dr. Sridhar Redla all the way from United Kingdom. And he is, it's an honor for us to have him because he is actually the president-elect of the British Institute of Radiology, which is a very, very prestigious institute back in the United Kingdom. And sir is a consultant radiologist at Princess Alexandra Hospital, NHS. And we are also joined.
Hello, sir.
And so we are joined by Dr. Vidur Mahajan, who is actually the Associate Director at Caring, and he's doing a lot of good work for artificial intelligence involving radio-diagnosis and many other fields. So.
Nice to meet you, sir. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. So, Professor Dasgupta, when can we start?
Yeah, you can start now. Already,
we should start now itself because it is
7:33.
Okay, so we'll start. Good evening, everybody. On behalf of the Maulana Azad Abdul Kalam University of Technology, West Bengal, it is my great honor and privilege to welcome you to this one-of-a-kind webinar on the artificial intelligence in radio-diagnostic healthcare. As you know that the corona pandemic is causing a lot of disruption in the healthcare access as well as the healthcare facilities across the world, and India has been hit very hard. We really anticipate that there'll be the access will be improved through artificial intelligence. And I want to congratulate our Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir, for allowing us to conduct this particular very important webinar with eminent personalities who have contributed a lot to artificial intelligence in healthcare, not only in the country, but across the globe. We are very, very happy to have with us Professor Dr. Sridhar Redla. He is the consultant radiologist at the Princess Alexandra Hospital NHS Trust. Sir, we are really happy to have you. He is the president-elect of the very prestigious British Institute of Radiology, and he has done a lot of work globally on artificial intelligence. Without much ado, I would now invite our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Dr. Shoykot Moitro, to give his inaugural address.
Thank you, Subrajyoti. Today, it's a very, very interesting topic, artificial intelligence in radio-diagnostic healthcare. And that is basically important not only for the context of the present time, because people are talking about this telemedicine more and more in this present context of this corona pandemic scenario. But the writing on the wall was this digital health and all these things that was supposed to come. And maybe that process, this pandemic process has accelerated all these things. But we were foreseeing that this digital health and all these interventions of artificial intelligence in healthcare sector, that was going to happen because Niti Aayog, when they published their policies, particularly applications of artificial intelligence in all sectors, agriculture and healthcare, from there onwards, that became more and more evident that government is also going to take up policy on this application of artificial intelligence in healthcare sector. Now this this artificial intelligence, though the subject is old one, maybe in 1950s and onward, at that time that was developed, but recently, this surge and the spread of this artificial intelligence, this intervention of artificial intelligence in different areas, that has become fascinating. What we are seeing in near future, we will be having, we'll be requiring a large number of skilled professionals in particularly machine learning, deep learning. Artificial intelligence has a bigger dimension. Machine learning, deep learning, this is a part of this artificial intelligence. But nevertheless, in these areas, there will be a huge requirement of skilled manpower for different domains. In our, we are looking after these industrial sectors, particularly the catering these requirement of these industrial sectors. We are working on that. And what we are foreseeing that industries that has been transformed to industry 4.0, and then from maybe after 2024-25 onwards, it will be transforming to industry 5.0. And there the major features is this massive penetration of artificial intelligence in all these manufacturing sectors in the form of these digital these transformations, digital trade, smart intelligence machining, smart manufacturing, all these things. For healthcare sector, the problem of this country like India, where this dimension is vast, the population is vast, and then there is heterogeneity is everywhere, diversity is every places. We do not have uniformity is infrastructure, uniformity in economy, the disparity in economy, and there are lots of issues are there. That's why access to quality healthcare by larger section of masses, still it is it has not been achieved, in particularly for this country, and that is creating lots of problem in terms of loss in mandates, particularly more expenses in these healthcares and all these things, because until and unless this medical the healthcare system is not strong enough, our these populations, our cities, our this countrymen, they will have problems of their health, and that will create that will impact our this economy also, because these are connected. What we are seeing that maybe when one person is getting ill, he's spending on medical expenses. At the same time, his contribution to economy is getting becoming less, and that is impacting on the world economy, and that is the snowballing effect. And that's why this is the time, the right time now, where we have to engage ourselves in this nurturing this particular area in a meaningful way for better applications, interventions of all these this development of these information technology enabled subjects, and in healthcare sectors, for making our people more this accessible to this healthcare system at remotest part of this country. This is number one. Number two is everything is going to be data driven. That's why this capturing of this data, then processing of this data, getting meaningful insight of the data, that will help us for taking up further researches in many areas. Healthcare sector is no exception. In similar, because here we are dealing with these people, and we have difference and diversity, variety, veracity, volume, big volume of data we need to handle. So this huge volume of data handling, curation of this data, getting meaningful insight data, and accordingly designing our healthcare system. That is one of the challenging the protocol for our the healthcare systems, our government policymakers, our research fraternity, for everyone. This is the requirement now. So with this, keeping this in view, earlier we did not take much interest in directly intervening in healthcare sector, except running courses like biotechnology, bioinformatics, and all these things. But of the late, we have really understood the importance of these subjects, and we are seriously trying to set up a center for digital health. And we are trying to integrate, the different resource persons available at this country, at the state, at the other parts of this world. And because this is the time for networking and collaboration and integration. Otherwise, what is happening for a country like India, the problem is here everything, most of the things are happening in silo or isolation. And that is the one of the the impediment for making formidable things in terms of outcome. So that's why we need to now, for discipline wise, we need to adopt the culture of breaking the silo. For our system wise, we need to integrate all the research activities in such a way that ultimately at the end of the day, the entire community, country, entire world, that is benefited. For all this research work, doing isolation earlier, it was maybe earlier it was the practice was that the culture was still this culture is still existing in Indian context. But as soon as possible, we have to get rid of all these things. That's why we are trying to approach to persons from other parts, experts from other parts, from institute to other parts of the state, other parts of the country, so that we can have a formidable and meaningful collaboration and integration with all of them. And this particularly in all these areas, we do not have dearth of manpower. We do not have dearth of resources. There are lots of very brilliant and bright people are available. Only thing till now we have not yet been successful enough to make up massive integrations of all these resources. Still, it is better late than never. So at least we have understood this importance of all these things, and this is required now because there are two things. One is generations of enough facility for our people who are residing at the remotest part of the country to quality healthcare system, and second is generations of large number of expert professionals in this field who can take care of all this, this technology management of all these healthcare dimensions. And therefore, my idea is that after the setting of the cells, we will have more and more frequent interaction. This is one of the biggest opportunity in this pandemic scenario. We are being able to connect with lots of these doyens and experts in their fields from different parts of this world at any point of time, and people are and this is a wonderful experience for us. And very experts, they gladly they are with the pleasure they are joining us, and they are sharing their news and their ideas, their news, their reports, their opinions, their feedbacks, everything they are sharing with us. In normal situation, probably it would have not been possible. Right now, this is the silver line amidst the entire, the dark cloud of this COVID pandemic scenario. So this is, let us utilize this situation as much as possible. And I'm thankful to Professor Dasgupta, Dr. Bhomik, that you have taken this initiative in these programs, particularly applications of artificial intelligence in radio-diagnostic healthcare. Maybe there will be more subjects to follow, more areas to follow. But what we need a formidable, this networking with all these experts. We do not want to leave anyone. That's why we have created our digital forum or our discussion forum and discussion front. There's experts like Dr. Sridhar Redla, Dr. Vidur Mahajan, Dr. Suma Chakraborty, all will be connected. And we want to enrich our learning community more from your, from your wisdom, from your knowledge, from your expertise. And this is our responsibility to empower our next generation, particularly this young population. We are taking pride of our demographic dividend, or our demographic dividend is our students, these young students. We need to empower them with all sorts of skill possible so that they can take care of the changing scenario in near future. World is moving very fast. In the morning, we are discussing about the Moore's law, which Moore's law means this 1965 when it was conceived. That time the idea was that within 10 years that capacity, this number of these transistors on a particular area, that will be doubled. The capacity will be doubled. But 1975, that needs to be revisited. That this 10 years is too long time. Within still shorter time, this doubling effect is taking place. That means we are habituated in thinking linearly. We cannot think of exponentially. This is the limitation of our thought process, but everything is happening now is exponential. Maybe that is not only for this pandemic things and all these things, virus outbreak, but this information technology, knowledge and all this explosion is taking place in exponential manner. We are not in a position. That's why we are many places, we are not in a position to catch up with this explosion of this knowledge, what has happened everywhere. And this within a very short period of time, I believe that Moore's law may have to be revisited again. So because the situation is changing very fast. So that's why my idea is after the setting up this digital healthcare system, the center, we will introduce courses like this, sorry, and more training program like this. Digital platform is always a formidable option, because as industry is moving to 4.0 with the use of these digital platforms and digital technologies, healthcare will be no exception. Many, particularly this use of these tools and techniques and gadgets and data collections, all these things that can always happen in the digital platform. So with this, I wish this will be a grand success. My sincerest thanks to Dr. Sridhar Redla, Dr. Vidur Mahajan, Dr. Suma Chakraborty. You have kindly consented to remain among us and to share your opinions, your ideas, your knowledge with our participants. And again, I think it will be a grand success for, and all our participants, they will be immensely benefited from this program. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your motivating words. And I'm sure with the esteemed panel which we have today, the faculties which we have, I'm definitely going to be very, very successful. May I now request my mentor and the person who's helped me to develop this particular program, Professor Shivamaya Dasgupta, who is the Director of School of Engineering Sciences at MAKAUT, to give his thoughts about university's future plans on digital health as well as artificial intelligence. Professor Dasgupta, please.
Thank you, Dr. Bhomik. Good evening to all viewers and our respected panelists, honorable, with the permission of Honorable Vice Chancellor. I would say that in our university, we have been doing research in artificial intelligence in our computer science department and School of Computer Science also, computational science also, and IT department also. But we have taken a decision that since artificial intelligence has become so common for all aspects of life and all branches of knowledge, so we should go in a bigger way, and we should also see that how artificial intelligence and other modern technologies are coming into healthcare and medical sciences. Although we are a technological university, but there is always an interface between technology and medicine. And in that area, both technologists and medicos should come together and work jointly for the progress of the field. And in that direction, we have taken decision. And so under the School of Engineering Science, we have introduced this Center for Biomedical Engineering and Biosciences. And especially we have taken initiatives in digital health, and we are getting associated with experts throughout the world through webinar and through exchanges. And we are trying to develop, our own manpower in this direction, and also to have collaborative researches, in this area, and which is very, very important. And under the COVID-19 situation, it has become more important because now the social distancing and physical interaction is much, much less. And as a result, the campus life has got already disturbed. And so we have to think of, and another thing is that now there is extraordinary need to extend the healthcare service to all the people of the country and around the world, where it is actually, we have to work remotely most of the time. So in that direction, we have taken initiative, and we are gradually developing the system, infrastructure, manpower, and initiatives towards research. And this background, today's webinar is one of the major steps in, I think, identifying which way we should go for having some kind of useful contribution in artificial intelligence application in healthcare. And so we have a number of extraordinary experts of the world and of medical science who will enlighten us today about how AI is penetrating in medical science in general and in radiology in particular. And we will get enlightened about this particular topic, and we will work with them from now onwards, and we'll get associated with them, we'll learn from them, and I think we will be able to make a very, very meaningful contribution. And we will take along all our students, all our teachers, and also our teachers, students of other universities of the country and of the world. With this, I will request Dr. Subhrajyoti Bhaumik to move forward and start the webinar. Go with the webinar and have, enlightened talks from our, honorable resource persons. Okay, with that, thank you very much for getting an opportunity to getting introduced uh, and telling about what exactly our intentions are to the viewers. And I congratulate all the viewers for attending today's program. And I think we will have a wonderful journey for contribution towards the application of AI in healthcare. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your motivating comments and giving us the vision where the university is looking to collaborate with the medical fraternity in the long term. So without much ado, we will proceed to our technical session. And it gives me immense happiness and pleasure to introduce our first speaker. She's a great person, amazing human being. And Dr. Shuma Chakraborty, she's my colleague from Peerless Hospital, Kolkata. Dr. Chakraborty is a senior consultant breast radiologist at Peerless Hospital, Kolkata. She is an ex-consultant breast radiologist at Bristol Royal Infirmary and Avon Breast Screening Unit in England, where she spent more than 12 years. She is a member of the CR Professional Learning and Development Committee at the Royal College of Radiologists, United Kingdom. She is the founder member and governing council member of Breast Imaging Society of India. She is the lead task force of Indian Breast Imaging Guidelines, BC, and she's a reviewer of multiple international journals and Indian journals, to name a few: British Journal of Radiology, the Indian Journal of Radiology and Imaging, and the very prestigious Indian Journal of Medical Research. Dr. Chakraborty, I would like to thank you personally for helping me to connect with our very esteemed speakers, and thank you very much for accepting our invitation. Over to you for your presentation.
Thank you so much for your kind words, Dr. Bhaumik. I'm just wanting to double check, are my slides visible?
Yes, your
Yes.
slides are visible. Your
Thank you so
slides
much.
are visible.
Thank you so much indeed. I would like to, at the very outset, thank our Honorable VC Sir, Professor Dr. Shoykut Moitro. Also thank Director School of Engineering Science, Professor Shibmoy Dashgupta, and for giving me this wonderful opportunity. It is a unique forum, a combination of technologists and doctors. We don't get this kind of unique set of delegates to talk to, really. So this is a wonderful opportunity for me to, actually participate in and spend the next 15 to 20 minutes talking about something that I really, like, and I hope should be useful as well. So I'm just going to talk about the very basics. I have a confession to make. I'm not an expert in artificial intelligence and radio diagnosis at all. At best, I'm an enthusiast. I've heard lots of talks by very eminent, global figures, and I just kind of enthused me into reading more on AI. Also, one of the things I felt when I listened to the initial few talks is that a bit of knowledge about the basics of artificial intelligence would probably have helped me understand the talks of the experts. So that's what I'm trying to do here, trying to build a base. And I know that this is a mixed bag of audience. So I'm hoping that for those technologists here, I'll be able to give a little bit of an idea of what radiology is about. And for radiologists who may have tuned in, a little bit of idea about what artificial intelligence is about. So hopefully we'll be better prepared for the more important talks coming after this. We're used to seeing intelligent, bionic equipment. This is a bionic hand from the Newcastle University in the UK, and pincer grasp here is really an achievement. And this hand actually is called an intuitive hand, which means that it can actually react without using the brain. So we are kind of used to thinking of AI in terms of robotics, in terms of bionic equipments that we see. AI in radiology is a little bit different. It looks a bit more like this. So this is actually an email that came to me last week from an Indian company which offered that this application, which is an AI application, which helps us actually score the severity of lung disease in COVID-19 infections. So for those of you who are not radiologists, this is a patient lying down on his or her back, the backbone, and this is the breast bone or the chest bone, and this is the heart, and this is the lung. The black area with air is the lung. And within that, AI has mapped these areas of abnormalities and gives us a severity score at the end of which matches the clinical condition or the clinical risks the patient carries with the infection that he or she has. So this is somewhat very much rather not somewhat, this is very much pretty much how AI is used in radiology. It looks quite different to the robots and things that we are used to seeing. What is radiology? So radiology is a branch of medical science which focuses on using different things. For example, we use radiations like X-rays to do a chest X-ray, for example, or to do a CT scan of the brain. And then we use ultrasound waves to look at, for example, scanning people's tummies, and doing for example, pregnancy scans, which are one of the commonest things that lay people are used to and are aware of. Then we can use strong magnets, which basically convert each of the hydrogen atom in the human body into a little magnet and then gives us signals. And we use those to interpret what's happening in a patient's body. So we use a lot of gadget, and that's why AI is very relevant to our specialty. And we can use this for diagnosing a disease, or we could use it to help or to treat a patient. We could sometimes use it to kind of intervene and help other doctors treat patients. And of course, we can use it for research. So this is an example of an X-ray that, say a radiologist would be seeing. This is the hip of a patient. This is the thigh bone, and this is basically a needle that is running through a bone, and there are some screws that are holding this, metallic needle or metallic structure in the bone to fracture, basically. This is an MRI image. This is the front of the patient's face. This is the back of the patient's head. This is the eyeball. And the reason we've done the imaging is to pick up this little abnormality sitting in the posterior or the part of the brain. Okay. And this is an ultrasound image. We get beautiful 3D and 4D images. It is the face of a fetus in a lady's womb. So radiology is very varied, and we see all sorts of imaging, and one looks very different from the other. And I spoke about interventions. I'm a breast radiologist, so sometimes I have to put little wires like this into a lady's breast. And why would I do that? So this is a mammogram or an X-ray of breast, and lady has a small cancer, which we may mark with a red, speculated object here. And so small that the surgeon cannot feel it. Now, the surgeon wants to take out just the cancer out, not the whole breast, just the cancer out to treat this lady, and he cannot do it because he cannot feel it. So what do I do as a breast radiologist? I put in a wire into the lady's breast, and then there is a hook at the end of the wire, as you can see, which holds on to the breast tissue in that area. Now, the surgeon will follow the wire and take out the cancer as it takes out the wire. So do all sorts of things like this. We put lots of needles, wires, we do biopsies, and all under image guidance. And again, all supported by some kind of a device or an equipment which is very much prone to technological, which is very much decided basically by technological advances in our field. It's not very straightforward, but it's not like we have a photograph of something and we just read different parts of the photograph. We can image the body in different planes. So we can cut across and make slices like this, which is the axial plane. We can cut across and make slices along this plane, like along the midline of the nose. We can cut across the human body and make slices, in this plane, which is kind of in line of the 2 ears, as you may imagine. And then we get very different images of the same organ. This is the brain, and then they look quite different in these 3 images. Again, in the same brain, we use this is an MRI study. We use different sequences So water looks white on the sequence, but black on this. So the information we have is quite complex and the appearances are quite different. Another example, this is a kidney, which looks very different on the way we have sliced this patient's body to this image, for example, where it looks more like a bean-shaped structure, which is what we are used to, thinking of a kidney. So there's a lot to take in for the engineer, for the statistician, for the people involved in preparing AI, and there is a lot to take in for the AI application itself, because it's a very complex but a very beautiful branch, which is very much dependent on technology. Now let's look at what artificial intelligence is. So it's basically use of a computer to model intelligent behavior. This is very important. It has to behave intelligently. It needs to think with very minimal human intervention. So an example of what came in the very beginning was computer-aided detection for breast cancers. Again, this is a mammogram, and the computer would kind of say, this could be a cancer, this could be a cancer. As a breast radiologist, I would look at this and think, okay, I'll check this out and I'll check this out, but hey, I'm not bothered about these two things. So, I'm not going to even check these things further. So what is happening here is I'm only using 50% of the information, and 50% of the information is actually distracting me and wasting my time. So although I'm saying that these two are not important to me, this application didn't learn from that. So this CAD, this computer detection, which was available say 10, 15 years ago, was therefore not AI. AI, by definition, should be able to learn, deduce, reason, and problem solve like a human brain. And that is why this is such an exciting branch, because it is like a human brain. It has to tell very specifically that these are the two areas which are worried. And if it does this consistently, as a radiologist, I'll start believing it and I'll start using it. So how do I make this, plastic and metallic box, into a human being with emotions and with logic and reasoning? Well, for those technology students who are here, it's very straightforward, I suppose. Basically, we use algorithms, which are nothing but a sequential list of rules that we need to follow to lead to, a problem solving, to lead to solving a problem. Pretty much like a recipe. If it has to be sequential, the order has to be followed, and then these algorithms are made into codes, and then the computer basically is fed this information to equip the computer with the ability to learn, deduce, and do all those things. And of course, it needs very high-end computer science, engineering, and statistical skills and intelligence. At the moment, the AI used for radio-diagnosis is mostly machine learning. This is an application of artificial intelligence, which basically provides these systems the ability to automatically learn and to improve from experience. Okay, not explicitly programmed. So the computer on which I'm now working is explicitly programmed, and it has the limitations. It is very accurate because it doesn't try to learn anything on its own. It sticks to what has been taught to it at its inception or what I may teach to it from time to time. So it's very accurate, but it doesn't learn. So it's not really intelligent. Whereas without explicit programming, with machine learning, the computer will be able to learn and progress in its ability. Different ways of learning. It could be supervised. For example, we could tell the computer that 1 times 3 is 3. And then as it goes along with experience, it will learn that 1 plus 1 plus 1 is also 3. So that is what is artificial intelligence. They need to learn newer things, although we could give it supervised learning to start with. We could also give it completely unsupervised learning. It's like if you put me in a cricket field and I have no idea that a game called cricket exists. I watch how people are playing and I make up rules in my brain and I work out how somebody gets out and I work out how somebody comes and bowls 6 balls. And so it's completely unsupervised learning. One way of machine learning as well. We can have a balance between the two, and that would be semi-supervised learning. So I know it's an animal, I know the body parts of an animal, I have to work out how big this animal is, how strong it is, and things like that. So this is somewhat halfway in between. And then the reinforcement learning. Here, the computer is rewarded for its good achievements and punished for its failures. Very much like, when you go on Google and you get the ads which suggest you buy this, you shop here and there. So if you actually shop from there, it's a reward. And that AI will then give you similar options when you go back on the page on the web. Whereas if you don't choose it, or if you say that this ad is not good, that's a punishment to the AI, and then it kind of learns not to show it to you, show that particular ad to you again. So it could learn from reinforcement as well. So in machine learning, basically, to summarize, we're going to put a predefined engineered feature algorithm. We will then give it some data, some expert knowledge, and then it basically quantifies some radiographic characteristics on its own. It chooses the most relevant features it thinks will make difference to diagnosis or the information it wants to give. It then uses very complex statistical input that's put into the application, and gives us really useful information. And at the very top of the machine learning spectrum is deep learning, or deep neural learning, or deep neural network. It's something like this. So we've got artificial intelligence, of which we have machine learning, which is what we are using for most of our radio-diagnostic AI work. And the top end of machine learning is deep learning, which is actually what we're using mostly in all our AI applications in radio-diagnosis at present. So what is deep learning? It's the unsupervised learning, totally unsupervised learning from data that is completely unstructured and unlabeled. So it is something like this. We put in some data here, and we get an output. And there's a lot of work. In fact, all of the work happening here is quite complicated, and is based, of course, on the input you've put, the algorithms you've put, and the data that you may have put in, but you have no control kind of on the output, because this brain here, this is much like the human brain, is extremely advanced, and there are multiple layers of complex processing going on. This is a hierarchical processing. It is non-deterministic. So if you put in something here, you don't know that this exactly will come out at this end. Things may change. It's non-linear, so it doesn't go along the line like that. Input here, and go in the next layer here, and then go like this, and then go back and come here, which basically means that there are a number of permutations and combinations possible here. The brain of the computer works. What the scientists have tried to do is simulate the human brain as much as they can do. And this, therefore, is a black box. We don't know how it works, but we know that it works well. An example, again, this is a paper, I think that's come about 10 days ago on the net. And there are 3 radiologists who have marked the abnormal areas in this CT test. And this is the AI application which is marked. And as you can see, it's pretty much the same. So we are doing quite good work. These AI applications are actually doing quite good work today. Then we move a step further. What do we do? So we've got eggs, something that we can see, but we don't know when they hatch what type of chicken will be, what color they will be, what their adult size would be, would have any, would be prone to any diseases. So we want to look at things and get information from this, which the radiologist's eye cannot get. So that is radiomics. That's how I look at it. Basically, there are a number of quantitative features or radiomic features, which we use deep learning mostly here, which are worked out by the computer, and then the computer basically gives us a lot more information than just purely radiology. For example, here, first of all, it works out that this is the abnormal area in the CT scan. It does a number of feature extractions. It works on a lot of different features that key things are important. In some applications, it will further match the findings of the MR with the CT scan, with the X-ray, and then it gives some new relationships. It gives us some genetic information, probably. It can give us indication of the pathology as to the grade of the tumor. It can give us some clinical information. For example, this patient with this tumor has probably a prognostic, prognostically can probably live for 5 to 10 years. I'm trying to simplify it a lot. It's not that simple, but basically it's trying to give us information that my eye as a radiologist cannot work out. So this is really like, pushing to the limits and actually the exciting part of AI. It's basically working as a biomarker. Without doing any blood tests, we are able to say a lot about the biology of the tumor, for example, and we are not doing any special tests. We are doing our usual CT scans, which we do anyway. For example, in a patient of breast cancer, maybe in that patient, I want to look and see whether the cancer is spread. So I'm doing the CT test anyway, and whatever information I'm getting is like a bonus on top of it. And unlike a biopsy where I would get a small bit of the tissue to study it, this radiomics is assessing the entire mass, and therefore we are likely to get more robust information. We do differently though, whilst the radiologist is looking at semantic features like shape, location, vascularity, and things like that, which you will often see in our reports, the computer thinks quite differently and looks at mathematical features, but we arrive at the same conclusion, which is very important. So when we look at this image as a human being, I know these are smiley faces, and I don't need even a moment to reach that conclusion because I have smiled myself maybe a billion times in my life already. For the computer, it has to go a different way because it doesn't know the emotion that goes with smile, and so it has to use its mathematical features or its agnostic features to reach the same conclusion. The advantages of AI, obviously, no human error. That's a big thing. And, no, it doesn't get tired, and it's much smarter, obviously, than an average human being. But it does amplify biases. So there are some problems. For example, here, it identifies this as a woman. It's identifying the tongs perfectly, but is identifying him as a woman, which means somewhere there is a bias which gets amplified on the way, and it learns this bias time and time again, and therefore the mistake keeps on getting amplified. So there are problems with AI too. A human being definitely would have identified that as man, even an average or below average intelligence human being. The challenges, of course, are as sirs were talking earlier, that data is a big problem. To get a huge amount of data, big data, is quite difficult. There are cost implications, ethical implications, legal implications. Say I'm reporting and I look at a tumor in the breast and I think it's a cancer, and the computer tells it's benign, not cancerous, but I think it's cancerous, so I biopsy it, and then the report comes as benign. The patient may then tell me, why did you put me through that biopsy? Why did I spend so much money? Why did I have to go through that agony of you could have just reassured me straight away, and then I wouldn't have had any anxiety for 15 days or 5 days or 7 days or whatever. So where do I stand legally? So there are a number of challenges to AI as well. So for those of you who are enthusiastic technology guys, if you want to make your product, please make sure that your AI which you're working on is relevant, is affordable, easy to use, and do involve the radiologist at the very beginning, because they'll be able to tell you what is relevant, what is required in the market, what they need to do the work better, and we'll also have to validate your AI once it's up and done, fully done. As a radiologist, I love you if you can reduce the time I spend on the scans, if you can prioritize my work for me, if you can take away some boring, repetitive things that I do. For example, measuring the size of a tumor over a 5-year period. Has it gone bigger, smaller? What has happened to it? If you can help me with that. If you can help me create draft reports. And of course, in the end, if you can give me time to maybe spend more time with my patients and less time with, reporting a particular kind of and maybe more time doing the biopsy or something like that, if you can help me enhance patient care, because that is the most important thing in medicine. So my penultimate slide here, when we look at these pictures, we know straight away that this is a happy summer day, and this is a melancholic day, and this is a eerie night. Because I probably have walked this road and I've felt the happiness, and I've sat probably by a tree and cried sometime, and I probably have run away from somewhere scared. But the computer doesn't know all this. It will still say it's happy, fearful picture or a sad picture. So we approach it differently. Now, the positive thing is that it's amazing, that somebody can do what the human brain is doing in a different way. It's absolutely amazing. But it also is something that we need to keep in mind, that there are no emotions attached here. It is objective, and therefore I think because human being is emotional at the end of the day, and we do as a doctor use our emotions all the time to decide what to do with the patient. We are objective, but there is also the human element. So there always has to be a human touch, however much I think AI develops in any branch of medicine, same as radio diagnosis. Thank you so much, MAKAUT, for this wonderful opportunity. And I really look forward, and thank you so much, Dr. Bhomik, who is also our very dynamic clinical director of medical quality and clinical research in Peerless, for this great opportunity. And I really now wait with bated breath to listen to Dr. Sridhar Redla, who is, world authority on this, and also to listen to Dr. Vidur Mahajan, our very esteemed speaker. Thank you, sirs. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Dr. Chakra. Yeah, thank you,
Yeah,
Dr. Chakravarti.
there are many questions. Maybe
Yes.
a few questions can be taken afterwards.
Yes, I'll really ask one question which has been asked. Of course, thank you, Dr. Chakravarti, for that wonderful talk. And I think that was a perfect note to begin. One of the participants, Shubhrajyoti Bose, wants to ask what is called anomaly detection. How can it be treated? How can be treated it for sensor function? Say it is for temperature sensor. What is your point of view on how anomaly detection could be done? I think what he meant, anomaly detection through AI. What are your thoughts on that?
To be very sincere, I have to confess, I don't know much about this, and I will not be able to answer this, with any authority. So I wonder if my other experts would be able to answer, but I cannot. I'm so sorry.
No problem.
I'll go read about it.
Yeah. So,
Shubhra,
yes.
point, Shubhra. I mean, quite a few questions are technical questions. I mean, unfortunately, I'm not both Dr. Chakraborty and myself, we're not data scientists, and quite a few questions are technology related questions. I just have to pre-warn the delegates who joined us. Both of us are radiologists. I don't know, Dr. Mahajan.
So I'm not a radiologist. I can take a shot, but I think, Shubhra, you already answered the question yourself. You've written collect sensor data from the board via Arduino controller. That is step number 1. Construct several MLDL models on TensorFlow Python using C++. That's step number 2. You can use PyTorch if you want. Select appropriate model, train, test. So I think you've already answered it. Beyond this, I don't think would be within the scope of this webinar.
The webinar. So I think, Dr. Chakravarti, I have another question from Dr. Manoj Shah, who's asking, looking at a mammogram, what features do you consider for diagnosis of a breast cancer?
Okay, that is something I can answer, thankfully. Well, basically, when we look at a mammogram, of course, as a radiologist, I would be looking at a number of things actually, but the commonest ones are, what is the size, what is the shape of the abnormality, what is the margin look like, because the margin gives an indication of what it is doing to the adjacent tissue, whether it's invading it, whether it's a benign thing with a well-defined margin. I would be also looking whether there is something called microcalcifications in the breast, which are indicative of very early change. I would be looking at the density of the mass. Is it a dense mass, which basically means that it is more likely to be malignant than benign. So a number of features, but like I said, AI would. There is actually a very good AI paper on breast screening, and it has shown that the AI application does, the same or better than radiologists, and they have said that they have advised clinical trials further. So there are excellent AI tools there for breast imaging, but I'm sure the computer uses a completely different way of looking at it, and I would not be able to explain that because I'm not a computer scientist. But what I would do is look at the semantic features, as they say, the vascularity, the shape, size, and things like that to decide whether it's benign or malignant.
Thank you, Dr. Chakravarti. I think due to the dearth of time, we will move ahead to our keynote session, which is going to be by Dr. Sridhar Redla. It is my great honor to introduce Dr. Sridhar Redla, who had his radiology training at Andhra Medical College in Visakhapatnam and Nizam Institute of Medical Sciences, Hyderabad, and then went on to train at Hammersmith Hospital in London. He is currently the consultant radiologist at Princess Alexandra Hospital, Harlow since 2000. His special interests include musculoskeletal and gastrointestinal radiology, patient pathways, and AI applications in clinical practice. He is a member of the Radiology Training Committee for East of England Region, Cambridge, 2004 to 2007. Dr. Redla has been into various management roles at the Princess Alexandra Hospital from 2007 till 2019, which included clinical lead in radiology, clinical director, and associate medical director. Currently, he is the clinical lead for Artificial Intelligence Assurance Board at the hospital. He's an active member of the clinical imaging and clinical informatics and intelligence special interest groups at the British Institute of Radiology. He has organized several scientific meetings internationally relating to advances in radiology. More recently, he has been involved in arranging several forums to present the advances and application of artificial intelligence in radiology from across the globe. He has been invited to give lectures for artificial intelligence in radiology in national and international meetings. He is also the honorary secretary and the president-elect of the prestigious British Institute of Radiology. Dr. Edla, we are honored to have you, and over to you for your keynote presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Bhavik, for the kind introduction, and good evening, everyone. And first and foremost, thank you, Dr. Chakraborty and Dr. Bhavik, for inviting me to talk today. It's indeed an honor. And also, my personal thanks to Professor Dasgupta and the Honorary Vice Chancellor, Professor Maitro, for hosting me today. So before I kick off, any disclosures? I mean, I'm not affiliated to any of the AI startups or the industry. My role was mainly to get all the various industries and radiology body together and try to promote and also take the AI applications forwards in UK. Today's talk, what I thought was I'll give you a brief overview of where we are with the developments in AI in the field of diagnostic radiology. I'll touch on the global scene, but more specifically the UK initiatives in AI. I mean, this is reflected across the Western world, more or less. Then I'll give you a few examples of some of the projects and collaborations we are undertaking in the UK. And I'll finally finish off by discussing the ethical aspects of AI. That's very important. I'll try my best to cover these topics in the next 35 minutes. Then I'll take some questions. But as I said, I just mentioned, just to make the delegates aware, I'm a radiologist, not a data scientist, but I'll try my best to answer any queries. Now, just a brief history of radiology, because as it's been almost 125 years since the discovery of X-rays. Roentgen discovered X-rays. Actually, X-ray is wife's hand in November 1895, so almost 125 years back. I mean, there many decades passed with some changes, but not much. But in the 70s and 80s, we saw the first major transformation in the form of cross-section imaging. By this, I mean, in those 2 decades, we saw the advent of ultrasound, CT, MRI. All these have changed the way radiology has been practiced. Until then, we only had X-rays. Then we had all these new techniques and imaging modalities, which changed the way we could see inside the human body. Then the second revolution happened in the 90s with the advent of the digital era, with computers and high-speed computers and digitization. We moved on to the next phase of radiology. I mean, until then, we only had X-ray films. Patient used to have an X-ray or a scan. The film was taken, developed, and the film was then studied by the radiologist and sent to the referring clinician. And patients used to hold them in their records. But in the 90s, all this changed to, well, at least in the most of the Western world, changed to what we call now PAC, picture archival and retrieval systems. Everything is stored digitally. This is important. This is important because this has in a way, has facilitated AI to come into the picture, because there's so much data which has been stored over the last 2 to 3 decades, and data, as you know, is what we need to develop a good AI algorithm. So I think the 90s saw the second major transformation, and now in the last few years, we are seeing the third major transformation in radiology, AI, artificial intelligence, or some would like to call it augmented intelligence. Now, this question came up a few years back, actually, 2 to 3 years back. Will it replace the humans? In fact, there was a big panic in the USA, actually, because quite a few radiologists started. Well, there was a big paper as well, seminal paper, which said, "Oh, so we know we will no longer need radiologists for the future, in the near future." So suddenly, the number of people applying for radiology has dropped dramatically. I think it was 4 or 5 years back, fearing that there'll be no jobs for them. But I think it was a false start. I agree. The discussion is no longer if AI comes. I think it is when it comes. It's going to come, but when it comes. But it will certainly not replace the humans. That's one thing I can tell you for sure. I think it will only complement and augment the care we provide. As Dr. Chakrabarti just said, it will hopefully take away the mundane tasks and leave us to provide a better care for our patients, spend more time with the patients face to face. It will most certainly act as a second reader in many of these applications, and as I would call, it will be a third eye for us, for the radiologists and radiographers, helping us to see the findings on the various imaging modalities. It will certainly have a major positive impact on healthcare across the globe, across the sector in various specialties. But I can confidently say our specialty, radio-diagnostics, will be one of the major beneficiaries of this AI technology because of the nature of our specialty. We hold so much data, and data is what drives this. It will help us with prioritization, meaning when there's big workloads, it'll help with prioritizing which patient should be seen first or get to the correct diagnosis. It will certainly improve the efficiency and accuracy of our work, thereby reducing the errors, which is very important. We should be as accurate as possible. Now, the role of AI and its benefits and usage will vary from country to country. This is very important because not every healthcare system is the same. What we have in India, I trained in India and also in UK, so I've seen both sides, how the healthcare system works. There are lots of differences between the two countries. So the way we develop the AI algorithm should be tailored to the needs of the healthcare system for that country. That's very important. So the radiology should work with the local scientists to make sure we get the best benefit out of the AI algorithms to suit the local system. That's very, very, very important. Yes, in some countries, well, in quite a few countries now, they're facing a shortage of radiology workforce. This is because with the new applications in radiology, which I just mentioned earlier, this is one branch. The reason I became radiologist in the 80s, when I was doing medical school in the early 90s, when I was training, so much was happening in radiology. Every 1 or 2 years, something new used to come up. This really excited me because every year it's changing and it's making a big difference to patient care. So it keeps happening. Even now, it keeps happening. Radiology keeps changing year on year. So what that means is we're doing more complex examinations. Year on year, we're doing more investigations. For example, in the UK, every year we do around 8 to 10% more examinations compared to the previous year. But the workforce itself is not increasing at the same pace. So there's no way we can produce 10% more radiologists every year, not just in UK, I think across in most countries. So I think this is where AI will help us most likely by helping us with the reporting and also to be more accurate in a shorter time. Now, this is the global scene. And as you can see, it's fully packed, hardly any space left. And more companies keep adding to this already packed space. So this is how it looks like as we stand today. It will change by tomorrow. There are tens of startups in the UK competing with hundreds of startups across the globe. This is how the new startups are going viral now. The young startups are vying with the big, well-established players. We have the big players like Google, DeepMind. You have the Agfas, the Siemens, the big companies, but also you have the younger startups with very dynamic, clever brains behind who are developing AI algorithms in specific fields. So all these are vying with each other. Some of them are being bought up for huge sums of money. I think there'll be a period of consolidation at some point. Not everyone can survive. Countries like the USA and Israel are leading the way with these startup companies, but China is not far behind. There's so much happening in China. I've been there in November last year, just before the pandemic, and the amount of work they're doing there is astonishing in the field of AI. And again, Europe is another big player, including UK. Now, most of these initiatives are led by the industry, but some countries the government is also funding them. Like in the UK, for example, there's quite a bit of government funding coming through now in the last couple of years. So, but the majority still is industry-led. In the UK, I'll give a brief overview of what exactly the government is doing. For the people who are not aware of how the UK health system works, we have what we call the National Health Service. Healthcare in this country is supposed to be free for all. So the government actually funds the health service. In other words, it's one of a major chunk of the budget is set aside for healthcare. I think more than 10% is set aside compared to, for example, in India, it's only, I think, if I'm right, 2%, I think, for in India healthcare. Whereas in UK, it's 5 to 6 times more at least. And most European countries have quite a big health budget. So we call it the National Health Service. Now, UK set up last year this NHSX. It's a new organization for digital data and technology. It was created to bring the best benefits of modern technology to all the patients. And it combines the best in the industry and the NHS, meaning clinicians and the industry and the scientists. Everyone is brought together. And what they want to do is to ensure that the NHS is digital ready in 2025, 2030. In the next 5 to 10 years, they want to make it completely digital, technology-driven NHS, National Health Service. And they are embracing AI to improve and get there, and also to improve patient outcomes. This is a very good initiative by the government. And but one thing in the Western world is any new algorithm or AI software released has to be validated, because there's so many companies releasing these softwares have lots of claims saying that this is best and all those things. So, but how do we know that it is good, it is safe, it is best? So we have to go through an assurance process. So all AI software which is released, algorithms, have to be properly tested before introduction into the clinical practice. This is very important. Otherwise, we can't consider it to be safe to implement. So we have a number of bodies in the UK who will have to approve this. Any new software, any new algorithm. The first and foremost is MHRA. It's called the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency. I'm sure some of these should be in India as well, but on a different name. So one is Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency. Any new product has to go through that. Then we have the Care and Quality Commission. We call it CQC. Very important. Every doctor knows this because they come and inspect the hospitals. And for them, safety is priority. Safety is top priority. Anything should be safe. Then we have the National Institute for Health and Care Excellence, called NICE. And for them, it's important that it is cost effective and it provides the best outcomes for patients at a very, reasonable and affordable price. For no point in introducing something which is very expensive and only benefits the wealthy. It should benefit the majority of patients and should be safe and with good outcomes. And finally, NHSX, which is a new body, which will oversee all this when it comes to the digital technology and AI software. In addition, the government, the current Prime Minister Boris Johnson, whom all of you must have heard about, announced funding for £250 million. That is, if I'm right, 2,500 crores rupees, over 3 years for the formation of an artificial intelligence lab called AI Lab. This lab is specifically to promote any new AI projects across the country from various hospitals. Any new project being developed by a hospital in collaboration with the data scientists and industry and startups, we can submit to the government, and the government will then look at the project and release funding. So this is to develop and adopt the technologies most promising in terms of patient outcomes and service efficiency as well. As I said earlier, workforce is a big issue. So we need to improve efficiency to counter this workforce issue. So these technologies are then tested in the NHS context, because we have in the NHS, we have, as I said, lots of data set. And luckily, because it's a common service across the country with so many acute hospitals, for example, we have around 150 acute hospitals. They're all linked in the way that they all work similarly. And all the evidence is gathered and tested for accuracy and efficiency and value for money. Now, how do we unlock the power of data with AI? This is a big question. And the way I see data is the new energy source for AI. There's no two ways about it. But we need clean data to develop algorithms. And this is where the National Health Service in UK is at the forefront, because there is so much data out there, and being run by the government, there's so much data which we can easily collate and sift through and help in developing algorithms. But these algorithms should be practical to use and vendor neutral. What I mean by vendor neutral is, I mean, as I said, there's so many companies all around the world trying to develop algorithms, trying to outfit each other, trying to be first to the post. Say, for example, one company like Google develops an algorithm. What we need is that algorithm should be able to work on other platforms as well. So no point in it, that algorithm, which Google or whoever develops or Siemens, works only on their platform. Then it's not useful for the majority. So this should be vendor neutral. Any algorithm should be able to be used. Yes, they might charge a fee, but should be able to be used on any platform. That's very important to have that vendor neutrality. And the next thing is, if this algorithm should be seamlessly integrated into any imaging system. About, once again, the same point should be it whatever the company it is, you should be able to integrate this algorithm onto that platform. And the three key players in the development of these algorithms are the developers themselves, which I mean you guys, the scientists, computer scientists, very important because you're the brains. Then the vendors, who are the companies, the various established companies and startups. The next one, and finally us, the radiologists. Dr. Chakravarti said very clearly, do work with us. This is very important. And what I mean is we should work together, you guys scientists and the companies and the radiologists, to see, we tell you what we need, we tell you what is best for patients, and then you go back and do the research and come up with algorithms. And we go to the companies who will help us develop these algorithms and AI software. So it's a three-way process, but all of us working together in tandem. That's very, very, very important. Now, coming to AI and radio-diagnostics, how I see it, I mean, we can describe this, the applications under two headings. One is upstream AI. This is what Dr. Chakrabarti was pleading earlier, put a plea earlier saying, take away the mundane tasks from us. Yes, I agree with her completely, 100%. There's so many tasks which can be done nowadays with automation and digitization, the workflow, the scheduling of patients, and protocols. It's very important because just to explain to you, we have computerized tomography, CT, computerized tomography, MRI scans, and all those things. If you refer a patient for an abdomen CT, there'll be so many protocols depending on what you're looking for. We have separate protocol for a pancreas, one organ in the abdomen. In the liver itself, we have 3 or 4 protocols for different liver conditions. For the intestines, we have another protocol. So all this can be fed to the machine, and the machine should just be able to pick up the correct protocol when scanning to be more efficient. Quality assessment is important. Dose modulation, once again, the dose should be able, the machine should be able to modulate the dose depending on the examination and also the type of patient. Some patients don't need to be given a high dose examination. Dose, I mean radiation dose, that's what I mean. So we can cut down on the dose as well by using these applications. And this is very important, once again, because everyone accumulates a radiation dose. So keeping it to minimum is so important, especially in the younger patients, younger female patients, and also children. So low dose examinations is also very important in that age group. And also, as I told you, more and more new technologies are coming through in radiology, MRI scan, and also PET scan, positron emission tomography, mainly for cancer patients. These scans take a longer time. I mean, but what's happening now is the techniques have been developed very well. We're getting better images, but the next stage now is to make it faster. So that we can do by using AI. Already there's been some studies which show that the time can be cut down by using AI. And finally, which Dr. Chakrabarti mentioned, reporting templates. We need to develop smart reporting so that the reporting can be done using templates and standard templates to which we add our findings. Should be easy to read for clinicians and interpret, and also to direct the clinicians what next. Yes, I give a report, this patient has so and so, but what's the next step? In fact, once again, the AI tool should be able to give that. Based on the diagnosis I give, it should tell us, look, this patient needs so and so next. So all this is upstream AI. And downstream AI, which is what Dr. Chakrabarti was showing earlier, machine learning, development and validation of algorithms, prioritizing and using AI as the primary or secondary reader, and finally radiomics, which is disease characterization, which will be the next stage of AI, a huge big jump in AI for radiology. Now, AI and machine learning in imaging. So what will be the role of AI and machine learning in imaging? Well, I already made it clear, it will not replace us, but it will certainly change the way we practice in the future, or not actually now itself, but definitely in the near future. So we should embrace it and lead the way, in a way, with the data scientists and the vendors. So I'm just repeating again, the data analysts and computer scientists and the radiology professionals should work together. When I mean radiology professionals, it's not just radiologists, by the way. There's so many other people involved in radiology. Once again, for the people who may not know how this branch works, as radiologists, we are doctors, we get trained, first a basic medical degree, then we train another 5 years to become a radiologist. And then, yeah, our role is to interpret the scans. We do perform some scans, but main role is to interpret the scans. We also perform procedures under image guidance. So we do various things. But in the background, so many other people working equally hard. We have the radiographers and the technicians who produce these scans. They're the people who actually scan the patients when it comes to CT, MRI, PET scans. They're equally important. Then we have the radiotherapists who treat cancer patients. Then we have medical physicists, another group of important bunch, who actually look after the machines and also measure the radiation dose and all those things. That's the fourth group. And finally, nowadays, very important, IT, PACs, and researchers. So it's actually all these groups, and we also have assistants who help with all the day-to-day jobs. So it's a big department, actually. Radiology is one of the biggest departments in any hospital. So all these people are equally important when it comes to working together to produce the best outcomes for the patients. Now, AI is already in use. I mean, we may not call it AI, but it's already in use. One is CAD, computer-aided detection of cancer, particularly in lungs. We already use it. Then for the CT colon, that is an examination to assess the large intestine in the abdomen, in the tummy. Previously, the only way we could assess it is by endoscopy, which is putting a camera into the intestines and looking inside. But now, with CT, computerized tomography, we have a software where we can put in gas into the intestine and assess the large intestine. It's called CT colonography. Once again, we use AI to pick up any lesion in the intestines. So we already use it, actually. We don't call it AI, but we already use it. Then we have 3D segmentation. So the digital data can be analyzed, and we can segment different parts of the body. We can just look, for example, after imaging the body, we can only look at the bones or only the arteries. So that's already there. We already have post-processing. We have raw data, and the computer processes the data and produces images which we can look at more easily in different planes. As you were shown earlier, the axial plane, sagittal plane, coronal planes, all this is processed by the computers. We don't need to do anything. And finally, voice recognition, natural language processing. Most of you must be aware of this. And nowadays, in our hospitals in UK, we don't have any secretaries. In my hospital, 0 secretaries. Everything is done with voice recognition. I look at the images, I dictate my report. It is transcribed automatically onto the screen. Once I click the button, the report goes to the referrer straight away. So everything is automated now. So all this is, in a way, AI in practice. We just don't call it AI. But what's the next phase of AI? And now in the near future, as I said earlier, optimize workflows. This is very important. Where it's a busy department, busy work, healthcare system. AI can help with the workflows, coordinate, integrate information, because so much information on the patient. Should able to coordinate, get all the relevant information into the patient folder. Because no point in having different systems which don't talk to each other. We should develop a system which integrates and gets everything into the same folder. So we should be able to access this information at the click of a button. So that's how the future should look like. Screening programs. I mean, in the UK, for example, we have screening programs for some conditions, not everything, for some conditions. The most well-developed screening program is for breast. What happens is every 3 years, patients have a screening mammogram after 50 years until the age of 70 something. So these things can be automated because rather than going through notes and everything, the computer should be able to pull up the patient when they're ready for screening, send a note saying, turn up your screening between these dates. This can be automated. Prioritized reports, I told you already. And yes, flagging up critical findings. This is important. Sometimes I report, say, 30, 40 scans a day. There might be some patients who will need urgent attention. So once again, I click a button and the report is highlighted and goes to the relevant clinician who acts on it straight away. Once again, it's a form of AI. When we're already implementing this. And this leads to accurate and timely diagnosis and treatment. And I already spoke about reporting templates. And there are endless possibilities, which I already mentioned to you. And one thing I want to bring up is it should assist residents and trainees in their learning and research. I think once again, I think the training curriculum for radiology is changing now. AI is becoming integral part of the training now. And that's the way the future is. And the radiomics and radiogenomics, which we touched on earlier, which is very important in the field of oncology. Radiomics, which Dr. Chakraborty already mentioned to you, is algorithms used to identify distinctive imaging features between disease forms for diagnosis, for predicting prognosis, and also treatment response as well. So many features which we can collate from the information we have. We already have the information from the scans. And then from the information, we can achieve all this. And radiogenomics is the next step. This information can be linked to genomic data to potentially improve prediction accuracy of patient outcomes, clinical outcomes. And the next point is not my field, but from what I'm hearing, it has a potential impact on precision radiotherapy. Radiotherapy is giving radiation to tumors. Rather than irradiating the whole body, whole region, for example, a pelvic tumor, be it in the uterus or the bladder or whatever, prostate or rectum, they can go for precision radiotherapy so that the surrounding organs are spared. Because when you give radiotherapy to the pelvic organ, it can destroy the surrounding cells as well. But precision radiotherapy will avoid all that. I'm not an expert. I'm just telling you this is possible. Yes, radiomics is one thing, as I said, as I heard earlier, is exciting. Huge potential impact in oncology. It will increase precision diagnosis, assess prognosis, meaning how well the patient will be doing in the years to come, how long they can live, for example, we can probably predict. And all. So this is based on the therapy response to the type of tumor they have. This is how it works in summary. The patient has a scan, you can see in the left-hand side. Then that's images of a lung with a tumor. The region of interest is segmented. Then the algorithm picks up certain features. It looks at the shape of the lesion and gives an analysis. It looks at the texture of the lesion. That's very important. It's called texture analysis because different tumors potentially have different textures. Because a lung cancer can be different types. It can be small cell carcinoma, non-small cell carcinoma, adenocarcinoma, different types. And all of them have different prognosis. So hopefully, this algorithm, based on the texture of the tumor, can give a more accurate diagnosis what type of tumor it can be. And the other features which we look at is angiogenesis, which is the blood flow through the tumor, and metabolic analysis as well, how the tumor is reacting. So all these features are then put into a statistical model, and then we get a most likely diagnosis. This is most likely this tumor type, and this is most likely the prognosis for the patient and the treatment outcome for the patient. So this is what, in summary, a brief summary of how radiomics will give us in the future. I know it's a few years away, I think. Lots of studies are happening. University College London, for example, there's a big study there going on in this direction across the globe. They're doing lots of work on radiomics. And China is a big player in this. I heard a few talks there on radiomics, and they think it's going to come very soon. But validation is the biggest issue here. We need to validate because there's some challenges there are some challenges before it can be implemented. We need to develop a common nomenclature because everywhere they're doing different works on this. How do we share the image data? We need large computing power and storage requirements, which I think is I think in this day and age, that's probably achievable. And validating models across different imaging platforms. And we should also take into account variations amongst patient populations. What cancer is common here in UK may not be common in India and Japan, for example. Japan has more stomach cancers, for example, just telling you. And the type of cancers can vary as well, not just stomach cancer, but what I'm saying is type of cancer can vary. So all this has to be taken into account in radiomics. Now coming to some of the more common applications, which actually are either being used now or almost ready to be used. This is the first one which actually been implemented, apart from breast, which is almost there, chest imaging. This basically relies on pattern recognition. And you have an image of a chest there. The middle white part is the heart and the backbone, the spine. On either side, you can see the lungs, which are the dark areas here, both side lungs. And these are all the ribs here. The curved lines are ribs. Okay, the lungs are dark, you can see there. So any lesion in the lung will appear as a white patch in the lungs. So what happens is the computer, the machine learning, it will learn that, oh, something is wrong in the lung, that what it will say at the moment. So it will pick up any abnormality in the lungs. So this is useful in the developing countries. I put that, I should have called developing countries, and even in, especially in India and Asia, for example, we have a certain high disease prevalences. For example, TB is still prevalent. And in some remote areas, yes, we will be able to do an X-ray, but there may not be a radiologist to report the X-ray straight away. So what the AI algorithm can do is sift through the X-rays, identify the ones which are abnormal, and leave the ones which are normal. So the abnormal ones can then be sent to a central station where the radiologist can report straight away, thereby arriving at an early diagnosis and treat the patient straight away, thereby reducing their morbidity and mortality. That's what they say. Meaning the patients can be treated earlier so that they can improve early, not go to complications. So this is a very, very useful tool in the developing world. It is also useful in the developed world for a different reason. I mean, there's a big workforce shortage, I told you earlier. In fact, in some UK hospitals, luckily not in my hospital, but in some UK hospitals, there is a big backlog of work. In some hospitals, they take a few weeks to report an examination. So there might be a big lesion there, which may not be picked up if it's sitting in a big queue on the workstation. So what AI will do is, will pick up those X-rays with a positive finding, and they will jump the queue and go to the top of the pile, digital pile. And so the radiologist will report them first. So that way, we're actually benefiting the patient. So this is how this tool can be useful in developed countries with workforce shortages. Now, the current scourge for all of us, COVID-19, and some of the companies quickly come up with a solution for this as well. It's the COVID-19 triage tool algorithm. So this is how a patient with very bad COVID-19 pneumonitis infection looks like. So you saw the earlier X-ray with clear lungs. And now coming to this slide, you can see there's some patches here, white patches here in both lungs. That's a typical appearance of a COVID-19 pneumonia or infection. And the AI algorithm can just pick up those. I mean, once it learns machine learning, how it looks like, then it will pick up and highlight these findings and diagnose. In a way, it gives a diagnosis straight away, more or less, help with the diagnosis. But more importantly, none of us know the long-term follow-up outcomes for these patients yet. We only know the short-term outcome. What we're seeing in the UK has been very badly hit around mid-March to mid-May. Now things are, touch wood, things are settling down now. But what we're seeing now is, in my hospital, for example, and at the peak, we had around 200 patients at any given time, and every day, 10 patients dying every day. It was so bad in the mid-March to mid-May. And we saw quite a few of these patients with these changes. Some of them recovered, some sadly passed away. But what we're doing now is we're following up these patients now, 3 months down the line. And some of these patients are gradually recovering, but they're still having some lung changes. So this tool will help us with the quantification of the lung changes. But what we don't know is what the long-term outcome is in these patients with bad COVID infection. We have to wait and see. But anyway, this tool, I think, is very useful for the long-term follow-up. And also, this was mentioned earlier as well, the AI is very useful for detecting, this is a CT chest image, a cross-section image of the chest, heart here, the lungs, and there's a little nodule in the lung. The problem with these nodules is a big lesion is straightforward, most likely a tumor. The small lesions less than 10 millimeter may not necessarily be a tumor, but can become a tumor afterwards. So the AI algorithms are useful to, first of all, to characterize the nodule. Sometimes some nodules have features which will say there might be a cancer. It might be a cancer. Then we have to act quickly. Some nodules may be smooth, round and smooth, 5 to 6 millimeters, for example. We don't need to touch them yet. They have to be, but the problem is that we followed up regularly, 6 monthly or 1 yearly, depending on the size and features. And it's a big pain reporting this follow-up CTs. It takes a lot of time. So these AI algorithms will play a major role in following up these nodules. And also the lung screening program has just kicked off in UK. Many countries already have it, I think, in the Western world. Once again, AI will be useful to pick up the ones which are positive. And a few studies which said that the accuracy of AI is better than radiologists. I easy to understand why, because this is a boring job for us. And also, but more importantly, the AI algorithm will decrease our reporting time by almost 50%, because it will already highlight the areas we need to look at. So it will be quicker for us to report a scan with the AI algorithm in the background. So that's more important. So we can report almost double the number of scans compared to before. Moving on to breast. This is sorry, just skipping to a couple of slides. Breast is another area where AI has a major role to play. I mean, you saw some examples earlier, so I did not put any examples here, but we have a big project going on in Scotland called ICAD. You can see the full form of it. So it's a 50 million project co-funded by UK government and a couple of companies. And what it does is, this is what I want to show you actually. Because this is a summary of how it should look like, how it should work. Step one, the clinicians identify a challenge and give it to the data scientists or the AI innovation team, whatever you call it. And you guys then work with us, pick up this challenge and train the algorithm, but for that you need data. So what you do is you pull the data from our database, which is our clinical workstation, where we store all the data, because with PACS, Picture Archival and Retrieval System, all our previous studies are stored there for many years, not just one hospital, across the country actually. So you can access the data from our system into this safe haven. It's important because this has to be safe. This is patient data. Patient data is so important. It has to be anonymized, first of all, and should be safe and not accessible to anyone else. So we call it a safe haven. So the scientists will use this workspace, the safe haven, using this data to develop an algorithm. And once you're ready with the algorithm, you release it, and then it goes back into the clinical system over here. That's step 5. The algorithm is then deployed after validation. Don't forget, we have to validate the data, and then it's released into the clinical system. And the clinician who uses these computers to report has the AI algorithm in the background, and with the click of a button, we should be able to activate the algorithm, which should help us in reporting the case more accurately and efficiently. So we call this the clinical cockpit. So where we have everything in the same workstation. This is what I call by an integrated system, portal, where we can report our studies. This is how I think, this is how it should look like, and this is what they're aiming for, this particular group in Scotland. This is the Scottish breast screening program, one of the biggest in the country, and one of the biggest databases in the world, actually. As I told you earlier, patients have a 3-yearly mammogram, is X-ray of the breast for women aged 50 to 70, because that's the highest age group where we detect cancers. They do 2 views, meaning two mammograms for each patient, and each case is reported by 2 radiologists. That's a requisite in the UK, so that to minimize errors, that's important. And then that means that around 250,000 women per year are invited for screening. So we have so many examinations done in 3 years, huge numbers. So this makes it one of the biggest digital data set in the world. So I would like to thank Dr. Gerald Lipp, who's leading on this and who has provided me with this information. So, but why I brought up AI here is, as you just saw, we need 2 radiologists, so many studies, and we are number of radiologists We're not able to catch up with the increasing workload. So hopefully, in the near future, AI will be one of the readers, with radiologists being the second reader. And that way the workforce can be halved, not halved, but any shortage of workforce can be filled up by AI. That's what I meant by AI being as a second reader. So I think in breast screening, it will play a major role, and breast symptomatic work as well. Now, the next one is detection of vertebral fractures. This is also important, especially as people are living longer. This becomes even more important because vertebral fractures are common and strongly predict future fracture risk elsewhere in the body. I mean, we do so many scans, and above the age of 50 to 60, there is a very high risk of the vertebra compressing. This is the spine. The vertebra are the different blocks in the spine. Normally, they should look like a rectangle. When they compress, they become like a wedge or a triangle. You can see these two vertebrae here become a wedge here. So after the age of 65, because of osteoporosis, the bones become the bones become weaker, less mineral in the bone, so they can collapse easily. So after 65, you can see there's a steep upward curve, and almost by the age of 80, more than 30% of patients have collapsed vertebra. And these days, 80 is not that old. In the Western world, 80 is still late middle age, I would say, or at least 75, 80 is late middle age. So these patients, when they have a scan, can have this incidental collapsed vertebra. But we tend to ignore them because we are looking at the other organs in the body, not specifically at the spine, because this is purely an incidental finding. So what this AI algorithm will do is, we'll pick up any incidental findings like this. This is important, I'll tell you why. Because patients with these collapsed vertebra also have a higher chance of hip fractures. And hip fractures can be very lethal. And as you can see, beyond the age of 65, 70, they increase in numbers as well. So they become very, the patients with hip fractures have to be operated within 24 hours, because if you leave it too late, they can, high chance of them dying. There's increased mortality because of related complications like clot in the lungs. So by picking up these patients with vertebral fractures, we can refer them on to the clinicians to treat their bone density so that the bones become stronger. Now, there's a project happening in Oxford along with Zebra Medical from Israel, who are working on this particular AI algorithm. So as I said, patients who have these fractures are referred to the fracture liaison service. And then they're offered further investigations and treatment recommendations to prevent future fractures elsewhere in the body. That's very important for their lifestyle, because a fracture of the hip can be very debilitating and the mobility will be impaired. So we are trying to prevent that happening for these patients who are living longer into old age nowadays. Another interesting and exciting work happening is in cardiac imaging. Some pioneering work is taking place in London in Imperial College, and the lead investigator is actually a friend of mine, one of my juniors in training in Hammersmith, where I trained, Dr. Declan O'Regan. And they are using AI to enable doctors to predict outcomes for heart patients more accurately. I mean, what machine learning tool will do is to accurately predict a patient's risk of heart failure by tracking the motion of the heart from cardiac MRI scans. MRI scans can be used on the heart to look at the heart function. We can look at real-time images, how the heart is functioning, contracting, relaxing, and all those things. We can look at the heart, how the heart is pumping as well. So using this data, this particular group is looking at the prognosis and looking at the chance of them developing future cardiac problems. And it predicts this prognosis far better than what human beings can do. This is purely by using the motion analysis from the cardiac images. And just to give an example here, I'll just try to run this video. Yeah, as you can see, this is the heart. There are lots of little red spikes and blue and green spikes here. Basically, what they're doing is to look at they're taking various points in the heart, looking at the heart's muscles contractility. The red is it's contracting faster, the blue is slower, and they're taking all this into account, and feeding this to a statistical model, and based on the information they get, they can give a prediction of whether this patient can develop heart failure or any other condition in the near future. So that's how what they're working on currently. Some exciting development. Another area is in brain imaging, neuroimaging. As we grow older, this is a CT of the brain, an image through the brain. That's how it looks like. These are what we call the ventricles, where there's fluid normally in some sacs. This is all the brain substance. We call the cerebral hemispheres. These dark areas are the areas where there is blood supply to the brain. So they become what we call ischemic, meaning slightly, in a way, to put it bluntly, dead brain. I mean, as we grow older, the arteries become narrower, and most of us will develop these changes, and it depends on the age. If you see it in a 60-year-old, this is not good. But if you see it in an 80-year-old, this is fine. So basically, based on these changes, the algorithm plots a map and gives a volume of how much the brain has been affected. And this can predict risk for future stroke and also dementia and Alzheimer's disease. So this is another tool which is useful to predict future strokes. Another one is acute strokes. That is the earlier picture. This has happened over years. These changes happened over years, gradual change. But what about acute stroke, meaning sudden clot in the blood vessel, the brain suddenly goes dead? That's when you develop an acute stroke. Now, this is very important because these patients have to be treated literally instantly. Time is of the essence here. So an AI tool can actually diagnose this. I mean, I don't want to go into details. A team in Oxford are working on this. I've already worked on this and developed a tool. And the AI tool can develop and actually give a diagnosis saying this patient has an acute stroke. It also maps out the areas in the brain and says so much volume of the brain has been affected. So this all guides the clinician to treat appropriately. So this is another useful tool in brain imaging. And finally, the whole body MRI is another area where it's very useful. I mean, this is a study being done in Royal Marsden, a leading oncology center in the world, based in London. It's called MALEMA study in myeloma, which is a disorder of the blood. The white blood cells, the plasma cells are affected and develop cancer. And basically, these patients have a whole body MRI. Very times takes a lot of time to report it, interpret it, and once they're treated, they should have regular follow-up scans. Once again, AI tool is useful in once again picking up these lesions in the spine on the whole body MRI, and also to look at the treatment response as well. Just an example for you. I know it's too much for you guys, but just mentioning this is another field that it's useful in. And just to on the clinical side, what about the non-clinical aspects of AI? I mean, all this I mentioned already to you: reduction of radiation dose and faster imaging acquisition times, meaning scan is done in half the time compared to before. I think AI once again will be helping with all these things in the very near future. Already some companies are publishing reports saying that they can scan the patient in half the time compared to before. So lots of applications we can use in our day-to-day life. The slides are missing here, but I did tell that I'll mention something about AI, ethics in AI. Now, ethics is a very important factor when in AI, because there's so many algorithms being developed. But what about the ethics of AI? They are described under 3 headings: ethics of data, ethics of algorithms, and ethics of practice. There's so much data out there. So it's very important to protect this data because patient confidentiality is very important. The data protection varies from country to country. In the US, for example, whoever does the images own the data, whereas in Europe, the patients actually own the data. So it's very important to take their permission and also anonymize the data when doing any research. It's so very important to anonymize the data. Then also there'll be some biases in data. It's very important that you have a population wherever you're doing this work, the population to be accurately represented in this work is very important. Then it's also important to explain how you came to that particular decision when developing an algorithm. We call it avoiding the black box nature. Black box is you don't know what's how you got to that solution. Basically, we need to avoid the black box nature of an algorithm. Make it more open. How did you come to the decision? If something goes wrong, you need to be able to explain why it went wrong and how to correct it. So it's very important. That's ethics of algorithms. And finally, ethics of practice. This is also very important. We need to be open and honest with the patients. The patients, machines, and the human interaction should be open and honest. We should tell the patients, look, we are using an AI algorithm. For example, I told you about breast screening. If a machine is used to be one of the readers and radiologist, the second reader, the patient should be made aware, look, a machine is reading your scans, but a human is also checking it. So be open and honest. Then education. Education for the staff. Not only in the use of AI, but also need to focus on the ethical issues of AI. I think the staff should be aware of ethical issues, ethical collection and use of data. Then, one of my roles is I'm the clinical lead for the AI Assurance Board in the trust. We set it up only in the end of last year. So any AI algorithm, it's best to have your local ethics body. It has to go through the body, and the ethics body should involve all important key players, the doctors, radiologists, or any other clinicians involved. Then the computer scientists, people like you, technologists, computer scientists. We should also involve the patients as well. In any of these boards and bodies, we always have a patient panel representative on the body, because patients should also be involved in the decision of their care. That's very important. So have the decision body. And the big question is, coming to in ethics, is liability. Who is liable? Who is liable? Is it the radiologist? Is it the product manufacturer? Or is it a combined liability? No one knows the exact answer yet. It's a very complex issue. Liability is a big issue. So I think time will only tell where we go to. And coming to the last slide on the screen, which you can see there, what is our future? Our future being the future of the radiologists. I just picked up this comment from a paper written by Dr. Stephen Chan from Columbia University, New York, and Dr. Elliot Siegel, very famous radiologist, professor, University of Maryland, USA. The paper is on will machine learning and the viability of radiology as a thriving medical specialty. And the final comment is, in the foreseeable future, we predict that today's generation of radiologists will be replaced not by machine learning algorithms, but by a new breed of data science savvy radiologists who have embraced and harnessed the incredible potential that machine learning has to advance our ability to care for our patients. In this way, radiology will remain a viable medical specialty for years to come. And this is by, as I said earlier, I repeat again, for us to achieve this, we have to work together. All of us have to work together for the betterment of patient care and our professions. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Edla, Dr. Edla. That was that mesmerizing talk. This could have gone on for, I think, couple of hours. We would have listened to it. So there are few questions, Dr. Edla. I'll pick up, few questions directed to you. One anonymous attendee is asking, can MRI detect how much amount of CSF is getting into the brain in pseudotumor cerebri through transependymal diapedesis?
I'm not a neuroradiologist, but what I can say is MRI can quantify any amount of CSF in the brain. And for follow-up, once again, as I said earlier, that can be done by AI again. And for future follow-ups, that will be very useful. Once you quantify that, we can have a baseline, and future follow-ups can be done by the machine learning tool. That's what I can say. But I'm not in Europe. Unfortunately, in UK, the way it works is we become too specialized. And my specialty is mainly MSK and GI radiology. But I mean, I can infer that that's what we can do with these tools.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Arun Prabhu is asking, in the domain of patient and caregiver interactions, how useful, valuable would an AI system be that helps capture an ongoing patient story to the caregivers?
Yes, I mean, once I mentioned earlier about a comprehensive, all-embracing electronic patient record or digitized record. So this is the vision which I see in the future, where all the patient data is captured and available for us. When I report a scan, I need to know what this patient had before in the last many years, whatever, because it's all relevant for us. Radiologists are also, we're also doctors. So for us, we give a clinical opinion. In fact, we are clinical radiologists. So for me, all the data is so important for the patient, for giving the accurate diagnosis for me. And all those records, if they're in the background on my computer, at the click of a button, I access them. And it's a digital record, in other words. And that helps me with the patient interaction as well. So sometimes quite often nowadays, we see patients as radiologists, we scan them, we do procedures on them. If I have all the record available, I can give a better advice to them, and do the correct procedure and optimize patient care.
Thank you, sir, for your excellent presentation and your time. We'll move on to our next speaker, Dr.
I have a comment, Subhajyoti.
Yes,
That
yes,
is
sir,
actually what we got, a wonderful, picture. For probable research, joint research, actually with from Dr. Redla, that our people, our faculty members, and our associates can also join with Dr. Redla regarding, doing research on the data. On this, the data science and that kind of, AI algorithm part of it. Actually, we can join together. And I think that will be a great opportunity for us to work with him in that direction.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll definitely look into it. Yes.
Sure, sir. Definitely, we look for more collaborations, and the webinars are actually for that reason. So we'll now move on to our final speaker, Dr. Vidur Mahajan. He runs Caring, the Center for Advanced Research on Imaging, Neurosciences and Genomics in New Delhi, which works with more than 25 research groups across the world and aims to bring cutting-edge products in artificial intelligence space into clinical practice. Caring has published several papers on AI, including the first paper on artificial intelligence in the prestigious Lancet journal, and has more than 90 accepted academic papers in the field across the world. He's building a global platform for development, testing, deployment of advanced analytic solutions in clinical practice. Dr. Mahajan is an MBBS doctor from Lokmanya Tilak Municipal Medical College, Mumbai, and has done his MBA with dual majors in finance and healthcare management from the prestigious Wharton School of Business in the United States of America. Thank you, Dr. Mahajan, for your time, and over to you for giving us the Indian perspective of artificial intelligence in radio-diagnostic care.
Thank you so much, Dr. Subro. You make all of that, your voice is such that you make all of it sound so much better than what it actually is. So, thank you so much for having me today for this webinar. And, it's very encouraging also to see that we still have almost 120 attendees who are sticking around for this. So great. Thank you so much, everyone. What I will try to do is, I will try to talk about the Indian AI in radiology scene through the lens of our organization, which is Caring. Because fundamentally, if you think of it, all of the things that Dr. Redla showed that are applications of AI are things that doctors do, and more specifically, radiologists do. And things that radiologists do are essentially the same across the world, right? If there is a radiologist in Calcutta, the tasks that radiologist does are very, very similar, if not the same, as what a radiologist in the UK or a radiologist in the US would be doing, because it is a doctor and a doctor who is diagnosing a disease, and the process of diagnosis is essentially the same across the world. So if there is any AI application that is good enough for India, it would be good enough for the West. And if there is any application that is good enough for the rest of the world, that would be applicable to India as well. So that is why, I've chosen to present the India perspective through the lens of Caring. And, I hope you enjoy the presentation. So, to start off with, I just put this one comment here around what is artificial intelligence, because I feel very, very strongly about this subject. And Dr. Redla alluded to this aspect in his talks a couple of times, but I don't know, sir, if you actually meant it in this way. But I found the best definition of AI on all the places in the world on Wikipedia, which was AI is whatever machines can't do yet. So whether it is the domain of radiology, or whether it is the domain of text mapping or NLP or anything at all, right? If there is a task that becomes so trivialized today that machines actually end up doing it, it stops becoming artificial intelligence. So for example, simplest way to understand this concept is if you think of a calculator, simple, normal accounting calculator. If you were to show up with a calculator in the 1930s or 40s, and you go around telling people that I can do the cube root of 34,548 till 8 decimal places in half a second, so people would have gone crazy. It would have been, that would have been the epitome of intelligence at that time. And today, we have these calculators lying all over the place. Like, many of them don't even have them. We just use our phones, and we don't even think of it as intelligent device. So that is how this is a very, very evolving domain. And if we ever do this webinar 5 years later, we'll still be chasing artificial intelligence, and many of the things we talk about today might just have become normal. So moving on, what is Caring? Caring is the R&D unit of Mahajan Imaging. Mahajan Imaging is our chain of imaging centers in New Delhi. We basically treat patients. Patients come to us, we click their pictures, and we tell them what's wrong with them. Our focus is translational research. So we call ourselves a translational research and product development division, primarily because there are a lot of things that people have built, but nobody is using. And I will go deeper into that. We have two main divisions. We have Carpal, which is the Caring Analytics platform, which is focused on development, testing, and deployment of AI solutions. I will talk a lot more about that. And we have Caring DX, which is our next generation sequencing division, where we do all sorts of fancy genome sequencing work, and it's the most advanced lab in North India of its kind. This is the multidimensional team that makes all of it possible. There are doctors here, engineers, scientists, neuroscientists, all sorts of very eclectic group of people that makes all of this possible. And the other group of people that makes it possible are our collaborators, right? We work with, as Dr. Subro mentioned, we work with more than 25 collaborators across the world. So from MIT to IIT to Max Planck Institute, Harvard Medical School. Recently, we got the privilege of starting to work with them. So a lot of organizations across the world. And then we work with startups, big companies, small companies, companies nobody's heard of. Also, helping them in one way or another. And building research credibility is central to us. Why? Because, crazy group of people in New Delhi working with 25 of the top research groups across the world. You need to build research credibility. So if there is, one message that I would like everyone hearing this webinar today to take home is that, you have to publish your work, and you have to publish it in the top journals. And, we are lucky to get to work with some like-minded people. So this is a paper we have with Pro.ai, amazing company based out of Mumbai, which was the first paper on AI in the Lancet. And, we're privileged to be part of that group. And that this was for CT scans, as Sir mentioned a few minutes ago. This was the paper on CT scans automatically being read by AI. Subsequently, a group of Indian people wrote a paper on concepts for US FDA approval for AI. Then we, again, Dr. Redla mentioned the black box nature of AI. So we wrote the first paper ever on unboxing of AI, which was, trying to get a group of radiologists to decipher why an AI algorithm is saying what it is saying. Again, very, very novel kind of work that is only possible because we all sit in one, well, used to sit in one room with data scientists and radiologists working together. Subsequently, we wrote the first paper ever on algorithmic auditing, which is, what is a structured way to audit algorithms? How do you make sure that they are working? Very, very heavy on validation. And again, why? Because sitting in India, there is really no regulation that can control AI. There is hardly any regulation in medical device as it is. And that is why we need to have frameworks that doctors can use to figure out whether a particular algorithm is working to the extent that it claims. And hence we came up with this paper. And then this is a very technical paper on cartilage segmentation. We did the first ever meta-analysis of CT features for COVID-19 also. So just to say that, if you want to be taken seriously at the global level, you have to publish your work. We have more than 90 accepted papers in academic international conferences, RSNA, the European Congress of Radiology. We have won a few awards. From antmini.com. This is like the Aaj of radiology. A lot of it is again on AI. I'll just skim through this. We had again very intimidating papers, right? But you have to back them up with content, right? We did a 4-meter long. This was 4 meters long poster on how to lie with statistics, right? Things to keep in mind by evaluating a claim. Everything that you hear today about AI in radiology is a claim. You have to test it. You have to know how it is, whether it is true or not. There are a lot of incentives that play behind that claim, right? So we presented a framework for that. We are working on federated learning. Again, because in India, most places that we work with don't have stable internet connections. Even today, people don't have stable internet connections in hospitals. So you need to have a mechanism using which AI models can be trained in those hospitals without data coming out, right? Because if you have to transmit, I'm not talking about a geo internet connection to do a Zoom call. I'm talking about an internet connection that requires you to transfer 5 terabytes of data, right? Which is huge, and it is not possible. So how do you do that? Very developing centric problem. Again, practical guides for deploying AI, right? How do you deploy AI in different settings? Genomics. So the Indian perspective, specifically now, I'll go deeper into, is that building any technology has 3 phases. You develop the technology, right? First, you have to develop it. You have to make it. Then you test it. You need to know, does it even work? When does it fall? When does it fail? When does it perform well? A huge amount of questions need to be answered. And then finally, you have to deploy it. You need to take it to a hospital. You need to have a doctor use that technology. And luckily in India, we are absolutely ripe for all 3 of these. In terms of development, we have the R&D centers. All big companies have their R&D centers in India. Bangalore is filled with this. We have the world's best data scientists, world's best engineers. We have more data than what we can deal with. It is not very well structured. It is not the cleanest data, but just our population enables us to have the most data on the planet. So building AI is extremely possible and should be done in our country. Testing, we have the world's best doctors. Our doctors, case in point, Dr. Redla, our doctors go across the world, make a name for themselves and become the best in the fields, right? So we have the best clinicians. We have, again, infinite amount of patients. And not only do we have the numbers, but we also have the diversity of patients. We have diseases of the West. We have obesity. We have malnutrition. We have cardiovascular disease, but we have infectious disease. So we offer everything that is required to test an AI algorithm. And lastly, we are the ideal place to deploy healthcare AI because we need more healthcare. We have the worst doctor-patient ratios. etc., etc., etc. So in a nutshell, we are fertile ground for AI, and it is actually, very, very important for us to do this. Few examples, right? Some of the world's top AI companies are in India. Startups, Kyo.ai, I already mentioned. These guys, they have recently got FDA approval for what is the most comprehensive head CT solution. So an Indian company based in Bombay has got FDA approval for the most comprehensive CT scan AI algorithm across the planet. It is a matter of huge pride for us. Credible group of youngsters, 24, 25-year-old kids in Bangalore have created a chess CT algorithm, and recently they won one of the world's top competitions for predicting malignancy, so predicting cancer on chest CT scans, right? These guys won it. Synapsica, again, great new company based out of Bangalore and New Delhi. Two doctors from AIMS got together and founded this company. Brainsight.ai, they are so new, they don't even have a nice logo, right? So two young girls got together and said, we will make algorithms for neuroimaging, all India based, but solving problems for the world. GE, Philips, Nvidia, Siemens, all have thousands of engineers, not hundreds, thousands of engineers and scientists across our country working on AI. Academia, I couldn't put enough logos here, but these are just some of our collaborators: IIT Bombay, IIIT Delhi, IGIB in Delhi. So just to say that, we are not number two to anyone, and we should focus a lot of time and effort on answering the right questions related to AI. Some examples from our work, in India, this was, we presented this at RSNA. RSNA is like the radiology Mela. It happens in Chicago every year. This year it will be virtual, but literally 100,000 people get together, and we presented our work last year, where essentially AI helped prevent 12 wrong reports in our system. We take a lot of pride in being the best, but we still made 12 mistakes in 708 cases, and luckily they were all picked up by AI. So very impactful work that we had the pleasure of presenting. Then another paper we presented, that AI will mark all the normal chest X-rays, right? So automatically a report is produced for normal chest X-rays, and all the radiologist just has to do is press accept. So again, very, very impactful, saves time, saves effort. Nobody wants to read 500 normal X-rays because it's just a lot of time. So we presented this paper at RSNA also. Then we presented our work. Sorry, this was at the European Congress. Again, the same paper. Then lung nodules, as I mentioned, can be automatically detected. This is again work we did with Credible. This particular project, the AI outperformed radiologists by a factor of 10%. Radiologists were 74% accurate, and AI was 84% accurate. So just to say that, we are slowly getting there. And then because, we are in a place where, crazy ideas may be acceptable. So we've gone ahead and done some really, really crazy things. We are trying to do country level population mapping for tuberculosis, right? So the idea is there are millions of digitized chest X-rays around India. They are not on one database, but they are decentralized. Imaging centers like ours, hospitals like Dr. Suma's, places all over the country have chest X-rays. All we have to do is take a Raspberry Pi. Somebody was asking about, a question about the Arduino system. So you have a Raspberry Pi, you pass all of these millions of X-rays through that Raspberry Pi. It will give you a tuberculosis score, and like that, you can come up with a map of the country and figure out, are we even able to tackle tuberculosis? Now the same thing can be extrapolated to COVID. Crazy idea, only possible in India. Another very crazy idea, and this, the radiologists will appreciate, is we try to create diffusion images from T2 images. This is, think of it like, you click a picture of, Vidur Mahajan at 5 years of age, and you try to predict Vidur Mahajan at 25 years of age, what will he look like? So this is the MRI equivalent of that, right? You click one type of image, you produce another type of image. Again, very, very crazy, this is defined physics, right? So this is a diffusion image virtually generated just from this image. But, and the true diffusion, this is the true diffusion image, and somehow the AI is able to figure out that this particular spot has less oxygen. So, very cutting edge work, very crazy. This is even more crazy, right? Can we generate a pet image, right? An image that like this from an image like this, right? So synthetic pet, we're working on this. We've applied for a few patents and all of that because we believe that these things can happen. And again, in a country like India, where it is extremely expensive and many times impossible to do such PET scans in peripheral areas, maybe we can apply AI-based techniques and get a PET-like image and help cancer patients across the country. So again, very preliminary work. We don't want to make any claims right now, but still it's a possibility. And this is the true power of collaboration. This is, what we have built. These are all the projects that we are working on at Caring. Just to say that across the body, we are working on a bunch of different things. And it's only possible because we collaborate with so many players. I thought I'd put this here also. GPT-3 is being talked about a lot in the AI circles. This is like the most advanced supercomputing AI system produced. It works on text. And this is a conversation of this AI system. It has nothing to do with radiology, this part. I thought I'll put a little pause in the middle. But, you ask that system some questions. What is human life expectancy? It gives some answers. And, it's very, very impressive. You ask it common sense questions. What is your favorite animal? Why is it your favorite animal? Because dogs are loyal and friendly. What are 2 reasons that a dog might be in a bad mood? 2 reasons that a dog might be in a bad mood are if it is hungry or if it is hot. Yeah, amazing, right? And then you start asking it crazy questions, right? How many rainbows does it take to jump from Hawaii to 17? This makes no sense. And this is now where AI starts faltering. This is the best AI on the planet. And the answer is it takes 2 rainbows to jump from Hawaii to 17. Amazing. Why? Because AI is being forced to give an answer, right? Which colorless green ideas sleep furiously? And it actually has an opinion on that. So just to say that with all the amazingness, we do have a while to go before, machines take over the planet. And so with that, I'll segue on to what we actually building at Caring. And I'll go very, very quickly through this. There are 50 or more FDA-approved AI algorithms. There are, Dr. Redla showed the same list, hundreds of companies developing AI tools for medicine, right? But none are in the clinic right now. And there are a few key reasons why. The first is around access. There are just too many AI algorithms out there, right? How does a hospital get in touch with all these 100 companies? It's impossible, right? So there are too many algorithms. Then you need to interview the algorithm. You need to test the algorithm. You need to know that it works. And lastly, you need to integrate the algorithm. You need to, know which button to press. Dr. Redla showed that amazing flow chart of how he is integrating AI into his clinic. But not every hospital has that kind of IT setup. So, how do you integrate AI into a hospital? And these are things everyone who's building AI has to think, but they are not. And that's what then we are doing. So we are building the world's first end-to-end validation and deployment platform for medical imaging AI. It comes in a box that looks very nice also. And the idea is we want to take AI from the bench to the clinic, which is why, we are working with so many companies, because we see so much potential, but we see no hospital using them. And that is why, we are building out this platform. This is what it looks like. I just took the liberty of putting a few screenshots here. You have a full data set management system. You have validation projects, inferencing projects. This is just another screenshot. We have different metrics that we propose to test AI algorithms. All of these are proprietary metrics that we are working on, all in India, all in a small room where radiologists and data scientists sit together. Just very, very nice ways of evaluating AI. So with that, I would just want to say that whoever you are, wherever you are, whether you're a radiologist, whether you're a data scientist, start today. There are enough and more resources to start playing around with healthcare AI. Just go online, search the hell out of things. And if you still get stuck, come reach out to us and we'd be more than happy to help you through this. So with that, I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Mahajan. I think that was a really exciting talk, and to find India doing a lot of good work, and the road really looks very promising. So thank you for the talk. I think there is a question which I would like to direct it to you. And Mr. Partha Sarkar is asking, can quantum computing be applied in medical science or oncology?
Yeah, I think obvious answer is yes. The only thing is, when do we get quantum computing and in what, mode would we access it? Already there is talk of Google having cracked the quantum code and, starting to give access to researchers to quantum computing. So I think I don't think it will be very, very specific to medical science or oncology. I think it will host a lot of the general infrastructure. Like it will probably be on the cloud. I don't imagine carrying around a quantum phone like anytime soon. It will probably be all on the cloud, and we will all access it. But it will be very generalized, like, everyone would be able to use it. And yes, one of those applications would definitely be medical science and oncology.
Thank you for that answer. We have one question for Dr. Shuma Chakraborty. Dr. Manoj Shah is asking, how do we decide to go for an MRI or CT scan? Do you take MRI and CT scan? I think he meant, can we do MRI and CT scan for the same organ? If so, can the two scans be diffused for optimal feature extraction? Dr. Chakraborty.
Ma'am, can
You
you
are
unmute?
muted.
I'm so sorry. Very sorry. I mean, I think that's one of the things that radiomics can do is it can, correlate the findings between MRI and CT scan and put all the findings together and give us the full information. Now, the first part of the question was, can we do CT and MR? I'm not exactly certain which particular part of the body or for which particular diagnosis or clinical question we are doing it. Of course,
He's really asking, how do we decide whether to go for a CT or MR for a particular?
CT or MR will depend on the organ that we are imaging and the reason why we're imaging. For example, if I wanted to know about breast cancer, I would never do a CT chest because that doesn't give me much information at all. Whereas MRI breast adds a lot to the information that I can get. Similarly, if a lady had breast cancer, but I was wanting to know whether she has metastasis or spread to the chest, then I would do a CT because that is a much better investigation, much quicker investigation when compared to a chest MRI. So that would really depend on the clinical question we are trying to answer and the organ we are trying to assess.
Okay, thank you. I think in view of the dearth of time, we have to close the webinar. But before we close, we would like to hand it over to our Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir, for his final comments.
I think finally Dr. Dasgupta can put his comment, but so far my observation goes, all these three speakers, they presented this particular the theme, they covered the particular theme in a nice way. For radio diagnosis, Dr. Shuma Chakraborty, she focused on breast cancer, and then for other aspects, Dr. Sridhar gave a nice overview of all these things. Dr. Vidur Mahajan, he also spoke about the different these approaches, constraints, strategies that can be adopted for making this AI this application more successful. Of course, we have certain limitations, but the thing is now the pressure on the government. regarding high streaming of data. It is like this building up of this expressway. As we are thinking of this connecting the every part of the country by physical infrastructure like construction of these roads and all these things, that is required to make this country more advanced and more developed. That physical infrastructure creation at the same time digital infrastructure creation both should happen simultaneously. And now this is the responsibility of the entire government. But what we can do right now, where there is enough facility of this data transferring, there we can make this pilot scale successful, pilot projects and all these things successful, so that as soon as this infrastructure is developed by the government, and this is bound to be happen because of this global pressure, and because all this if you look at this geopolitical scenario, now India is the destination because more of this manufacturing organizations, they are interested to shift their base from other countries to India. And that's why, and when this is going to happen, and then emergence of large number of startups and knowledge-based this micro and small medium organizations, that is going to the future of the future. And there, this infrastructure development, that will be one of the major challenge for the government. And therefore, then not only our government as well as this this international, this focus will be on for the development of infrastructure, because everything now is happening globally. As it is moving to cloud and it is moving to digital platforms. So that means infrastructure, this development of infrastructure at India, at other parts of Asia, at Africa, that will be this onus and responsibility of developed country as well. So therefore, in near future, we'll be seeing lots of interesting things as far as the infrastructure development is concerned. But what our this strategy is, in between this period, we would like to have all these necessary skills and all this necessary this knowledge development, expertise development, so that this can be upskilled. This can be always this upskill for for making this delivery system a better way. So with this, there are lots of researches are required. Big data, because this handling of this big data in and storing this big data in cloud, then capturing this data by different these mechanisms, by applications of IoTs and all these things, that is happening. But we need to accelerate all these things, and then curating this data, then processing this data, then application of this data for machine learning algorithms and all these things to make valuable insights of all these things. Let us take some small projects, and gradually we'll this work on this this capacity development. So with this approach, we want to have this very active knowledge community to take up the problem of the future. In near future, what is going to happen, that maybe you will agree with me, the difference between a doctor and a technologist and engineer, that boundary will be diminishing. Who is doctor and who is engineer? Because for engineering profession, we have to understand more and more biology to mimic this biological world, to understand the design of this biology in a better way. Be it drone, be it all other things, be it automobiles, be it the space vehicles. We understand this this biological design in a better way. What is happening inside our body? What is happening in the nature? That's why understanding of biology will be one of the interesting features of engineers, and understanding of technology will be an interesting feature of these medical professionals. And that's why this boundary will be, this slowly that will be overlapping, and we will have a significant this emergence of this formidable knowledge by a collaborative approach. As I said earlier, this is the time to break the silo and to come forward with all our knowledge forces together to make it a formidable things. So with this expectation, let us take this initiation for taking this all these things ahead. And in near future, we would like to see more number of structured programs. Of course, there's many miles to go, but at least we should start some activities in form of research, in the form of this training, in the form of academic activities, so that within the shortest period of time, we should be ahead. We should be marching ahead. So with this, thank you all. Good night.
Thank you. Sir, with your permission, with permission of Professor Dasgupta, very senior faculty, Dr. C.M. Hussain, has raised a hand he's from the university. Dr. Hussain, if you have a question, you can go ahead. Dr. Hussain, are you there?
Prem Kumar, you just unmute Dr. Hussain so that he can speak.
Sir, just I think CM Hussain has disconnected. Got
Is
disconnected.
Oh, I see. Okay, okay.
Okay. No
CM
problem.
Hussain can always post question. So that
Yeah.
can be.
See,
Yeah.
we had wonderful, I mean, deliberations from all our, very renowned panelists, and we got enlightened, all of us. And, I think we have got to know that there is a lot of scope for working together. And from our side, we will be contributing from technological, aspects. But as our Honorable Vice Chancellor said, that now engineers should know biology more. And, someday we'll be there where I think all doctors will be doing, all operations, everything through only instruments. And so they will be very much dependent on engineers. And so whether those doctors in future days, whether they will be called engineers or doctors, it is a difficult thing to say, because they will be equally engineers, so they should know their instruments and all that. But anyway, so we have, now a bigger platform, and Dr. Mohajan actually, and Dr. Redla, and Dr. Shuma Chakraborty, actually, they have opened up a new field altogether in front of us. And what I can say that on behalf of MAKAUT, I'll be in touch with all of them personally to explore the new possibilities of collaboration. And I invite all the participants also to be in touch with us, because many of them maybe also will be contributing very meaningfully in future. And another thing I would like to announce, that we have intentions of, we are noting down all the details of the participants, and we have intentions of organizing small workshops, and where they will be learning, sometime a little bit of hands-on experience, so that they can be more interested, and they can also venture, okay, into the field. And as a result, all of us will get benefited, okay. And so with that note, I think this is the time to take part, but it is only the starting. Actually, we have started just. So there's a long way, as our Honorable Vice Chancellor said. And I think that there's a lot of great opportunities are lying before us, and we should explore. Okay, with that, I thank all the panelists.
Okay, I can see from the chat box that Dr. Redla posted a message giving thanks to us. Equally, we would like to give you thanks for joining us, and then we hope that in near future you will be able to get you again.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, all the esteemed panel, and thank you, faculties from MAKAUT. It's been a pleasure being able to moderate the session. I wish you a very good night, and please stay safe. See you soon.
Take care. Wear masks, everyone.
Yes, wear mask. Yes. Bye-bye.
Mask is carrying in the pocket.
Yes. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye.
Yes, sir. Same as for all attendees, links.
Yeah, you provide links, and also, you provide some your phone number or your email ID also you can provide, so that they can get the link of this recording, okay, later on. Okay.
Yes, sir. Sir, we have a YouTube channel, University YouTube channel.
Okay.
In that, all the
so
things
it will be
are
available in YouTube channel, isn't it?
Yes, sir. MAKAUT official YouTube
okay,
channel.
Okay. All right.
So you may announce the links.
Beg your pardon?
Say the links are available. You may announce. Manas.
Yeah. The links are available. For first one, for feedback links. Kindly requesting all the attendees to fill up the feedback feedback form, so that we can analyze our efforts. And the next one is the e-certificate that will be available after 2 hours from the ending of this session. And third one, that is the most important one, that is the YouTube channel of MAKAUT. So you can again visit and see the recordings of this particular program. So Prem, may I request you to just paste the links in the chat box also, so that they can copy it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
Already
Yes,
you
sir.
have done it. Already you have done it. Thank you. Thank you. Sir, if you have, we are staying here. So if it is needed, then you can leave.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you.
করেছি তো।
Sir, we will be closing in 1 to 2 minutes.
1 to 2 minutes.
Yes, sir. Participants can take the screenshot or note down the links. Sir, we can close the
We can
session
close
as it is
now.
10 o'clock. Yes, sir.
Yeah, already it is 10 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, Sukha sir is there. Thank you,
Yes,
Sukha
sir.
sir.
Thank you, sir.